I want you to think for a moment about a powerful force in the world. It's a force that has built empires, funded dreams, and created generational wealth. But it is also a force that has ruined lives, shackled people to a life of struggle, and stolen the potential of what could have been. I'm talking about debt. Now, many people hear that word and their stomach clenches, a sense of dread washing over them. They've been told their entire lives that debt is a four-letter word, a trap to be avoided at all costs. But what if I told you that wasn't the full story? What if I told you that the truly wealthy, the people who build and sustain empires, don't avoid debt, they master it. They use it as a tool, a lever to pry open opportunities that others can't even see. The difference between those who become wealthy and those who stay stuck, I's and T. Whether they have debt, but how they use it. The wealthy use debt to expand their power. The struggling use it to buy things that diminish theirs. And that, my friends, is the first and most critical lesson you must learn. The very first principle of using debt to become wealthy is this: never, under any circumstances, use debt to finance liabilities. You must only ever use it for assets that can generate income. This is the great divide. This is the line in the sand that separates the financially free from the perpetually bound. Let me explain what I mean. A liability is something that costs you money. It takes value from you. A brand new car, a vacation you put on a credit card, designer clothes, a massive television. All of these things are liabilities. They are consuming your resources, demanding monthly payments, and decreasing in value with every passing day. They are the siren songs of consumerism, promising instant gratification while silently eroding your future. Most people, tragically, get a raise, and the first thing they do is go out and buy a bigger car. They borrow money to buy something that immediately loses a significant portion of its value the moment they drive it off the lot. They think they are moving up, but in reality, they are sinking into a deeper financial hole. A hole lined with shiny metal and leather seats. They are using debt to buy something that consumes their income, not something that produces it. And the worst part is, they think this is normal. They see everyone around them doing the same thing and believe this is just how life is. But it's not. This is a trap. It is a slow, methodical march towards a life dictated by bills and payments. A life where you are working not for yourself, but for your creditors. Now, let's talk about the other side of the coin. Assets. An asset is something that puts money into your pocket. It generates income. It increases in value. A rental property, a piece of land, a profitable business, an investment in a stock or a well-managed portfolio, a franchise. These are assets. This is where the magic of debt comes in for the financially wise. They understand that debt, when applied correctly, is nothing more than a powerful magnifying glass. They use other people's money to acquire things that will make them even more money. They borrow $100,000 not to buy a sports car, but to buy a rental property that will bring in $1,000 a month in rent. They use that debt to acquire an asset. Now, who is making the monthly mortgage payment? The tenant. The tenant is paying down the debt on an asset that the wise person owns. And not only that, but the value of that property is likely to appreciate over time. So not only is the debt being paid down by someone else, but the value of their investment is growing. This is not a complex, high-level strategy that only the super-rich can access. It's a foundational principle available to anyone with the discipline and the foresight to understand it. Let me tell you a story. I knew a young man who was an aspiring entrepreneur. He had a solid business idea, but he needed a warehouse to get started. He could have saved for years, working a job he disliked, watching his dream get smaller and smaller. Or he could have done what most people would do and just kept dreaming. Instead, he found a warehouse and took out a loan to buy it. This wasn't a liability. The warehouse was an asset. It was the hub of his business, a place where he could produce his product, store his inventory, and ship his goods. Every loan payment he made was a direct investment in the growth and future of his company. It was debt used to create an asset that generated income, and in doing so, it became the foundation of his wealth. Fast forward a few years, and not only was his business a huge success, but the value of that warehouse had skyrocketed. The debt he took on was not a burden, it was a catalyst. It was the ignition that turned a dream into a reality. Think about it this way. You're standing on a riverbank and you want to get to the other side. The other side is where your financial freedom lies. Most people look at the fast-moving water and try to save up enough money to build a bridge. Stone by painstaking stone, and they may never get there. The financially wise, they see a boat, and they realize they can borrow a boat the debt to get to the other side. They get to the other side, use the boat to start a ferry business. And now, the boat the asceti's paying for itself and generating more income. The debt didn't sink them. It was the vessel that carried them to their destination and then continued to work for them. The boat the asset produced a new stream of income, and the original debt became a small, manageable part of a much larger, more profitable enterprise. This isn't about getting rich quick. It's about understanding the mechanics of money. It's about not being a victim of debt, but becoming a master of it. Now, I can already hear the objections. But what about a home, you might ask? Isn't a home an asset? The conventional wisdom says yes, but I want you to think deeper, okay? A home you live in is a beautiful place to raise a family, a place of safety and comfort. But it is not a true asset in the purest financial sense, because it doesn't put money in your pocket every month. In fact, it takes money from your pocket every month in the form of mortgage payments, property taxes, maintenance, and insurance. It is a liability that provides a lifestyle benefit. Now, don't misunderstand me. I'm not saying you shouldn't own a home. What I am saying is that you must be clear about its financial purpose. The truly wealthy, they might own their own home, but they also own multiple rental properties. They might have a mortgage on their primary residence, but they have several other mortgages on properties that are cash flow positive. They are using debt to build a real estate empire, not just to buy a place to sleep. They have a portfolio of assets generating income that far outweighs the costs of their liabilities. This is the crucial distinction. You can use debt to acquire a car to get to work, but if you want to become wealthy, you must also use debt to acquire something of business, a rental property that pays for that car and everything else. Let's explore this principle from a different angle. Think of your income as a stream. Most people have one stream, the one from their job. All their debt, the car payment, the credit card bill, the student loans like a series of dams and diversions, siphoning off water from that one stream. They are constantly fighting against these diversions, and their stream of income never feels big enough to get ahead. They are always in a defensive posture, just trying to keep their head above water. The wise person, however, they see those same debts differently. They see debt as a tool to dig new streams. They use a loan to acquire a business that starts a new stream of income. They use a mortgage to buy a rental property that creates another stream. Over time, they have multiple streams of income flowing in. And the water, the money, is now flowing to them, not away from them. The debt they took on was simply the shovel they used to dig the new stream. This is a life-changing shift in mindset. You stop viewing debt as something to be feared and start viewing it as a powerful tool for creation. But like any powerful tool, it must be used with precision and wisdom. A carpenter doesn't use a hammer to cut wood. They use it to drive nails. You don't use debt to buy a liability. You use it to acquire an asset. If you get this one principle, this one idea, deeply ingrained in your mind, your financial future will be profoundly different from the 95% of people who live a life of financial struggle. The path to wealth is not about avoiding debt. It's about using it as a lever to multiply your efforts and acquire assets that work for you, not against you. The wealthy don't work for money. They use debt to make money work for them. They build a team of income-producing assets, and debt is often the most valuable player on that team. So, where do you begin? Start by looking at your current situation. Take an inventory. How much debt do you have? And more importantly, what is that debt for? Is it for a car that is depreciating every day? Or is it for an investment that is generating income? Be brutally honest with yourself. This is not about judgment. It is about awareness. Because once you are aware, you can begin to shift. You can begin to make different decisions. Instead of taking on another credit card to fund a new gadget, you can start to think about what kind of asset you can acquire that could eventually pay for all of your gadgets. Instead of a car that is a liability, maybe you can find a way to acquire a car that is an asset. Like a vehicle used for a ride-sharing service or a delivery business, turning a cost into an income stream. This is the kind of creative, proactive thinking that separates the financially successful from everyone else. This is the difference between being a consumer and being an owner. Remember this, every time you consider taking on debt. You must ask yourself one simple question. Is this going to cost me money, or is this going to make me money? If the answer is that it's going to cost you money, walk away. Find a way to save for it. But if the answer is that it is going to make you money, then you are on the right track. You are now thinking like a true financial master. You are no longer a victim of circumstances. You are a creator of your future. This is the first and most important step on your journey to financial freedom. Now, let's build on the foundation we've laid. If the first principle was about the fundamental distinction between using debt for liabilities versus assets, this next one is about the kind of assets you should be chasing. Because not all assets are created equal. This second principle is absolutely critical. You must use debt strategically to acquire appreciating assets, not depreciating ones. This is the difference between building a fortress of wealth and building a house of cards that will eventually crumble. A depreciating asset is an object that loses value over time. It's like a bucket with holes in the bottom. No matter how much money you pour in, it will always leak. The most common example, and perhaps the most insidious, is a new car. A brand new car begins to lose a significant portion of its value the very moment you drive it off the dealership lot. You just took on a 5-year loan for an item that is worth less tomorrow than it is today. You're making payments for something that is shrinking in value, something that is a perpetual drain on your resources. It's a beautifully designed trap, a powerful symbol of status and consumption, and it is a financial anchor that holds most people firmly in place, preventing them from ever getting ahead. They're driving around in their new vehicle, feeling a momentary sense of success, while the value of their investment is racing to the bottom. They are trading their future financial power for a momentary feeling of prestige. This is not the path to wealth. It's a detour that leads to a dead end. On the other hand, an appreciating asset is something that increases in value over time. It's like a seed you plant in rich soil. You provide it with a little water, you're strategic to tend. It grows into a mighty tree. The classic example is a piece of land or a well-located rental property. Let's say you use debt to buy a house in an up-and-coming neighborhood. You put a tenant in there who pays the rent. That rent is not just covering the mortgage. It's paying down the principal, and it might even be generating a little cash flow for you each month. Now, consider what's happening in the background. The value of that property is appreciating. The land itself is not being made anymore. And as the population grows and the area develops, the value of that asset is climbing. The very debt you took on is helping you own something that is getting more valuable every single day. This is the magic. You're not just breaking even. You're building wealth on two fronts simultaneously. The tenant is paying off your debt, and the market is increasing the value of your asset. This is how the wealthy use other people's money to get richer. They leverage a loan not just to acquire something, but to acquire something that will grow and multiply their investment. Let me paint you a picture. I had a friend. We'll call him David. David was a good man, hardworking, but he was always just scraping by. He saw his neighbor, a man we'll call Robert, doing very well. Robert seemed to have a knack for finding good deals on properties. One day, David went to Robert and asked him for his secret. Robert smiled and said, "It's no secret, David. It's just a different mindset. You bought a brand new truck with a loan. You use that truck to get to work. That truck is worth less and less every day, and your loan is for something that is in perpetual decline. I bought an old duplex with a loan. The loan payments are coming from my tenants. The duplex is in a good location, and the value is going up every year. Your money is shrinking, David. My money is growing." David was stunned. He'd never thought of it that way. He had been so focused on looking like he was successful that he failed to actually become successful. He was using debt to pay for a lifestyle, while Robert was using debt to build an empire. The truck was a depreciating asset. The duplex was an appreciating asset. Both were financed with debt, but the results were worlds apart. The truck was a monument to his expenses. The duplex was a testament to his foresight. And that, right there, is the single most important lesson. You can use the exact same financial tool debt to get to completely opposite results, depending on what you're using it to acquire. Think of it like this. You have a choice. You can take a loan to buy a brand new jet ski, a toy that will provide a summer of fun, but will lose most of its value and become a maintenance headache. Or you could take that same amount of money and use it as a down payment on a small piece of land or a small apartment building. The jet ski is a depreciating asset, a liability masquerading as an asset. The land or the building is an appreciating asset. One will cost you money and shrink in value. The other will make you money and grow in value. Over the course of 5 or 10 years, the person who bought the jet ski has an old toy that is almost worthless and a pile of debt. The person who bought the land has a property that is worth significantly more than they paid for it. And the debt has likely been paid down significantly by the income generated from it. This is the power of strategic thinking. It's not just about what you buy. It's about what that thing does for you after you've bought it. It's a simple idea, but it's not easy to follow. Our culture bombards us with messages that tell us to buy things that depreciate. We are told that we deserve the new car, the latest gadget, the vacation we can't afford. These things are designed to give us an instant hit of pleasure. But they are also designed to keep us on the treadmill, working harder and harder just to pay for them. The path to wealth is often less glamorous in the beginning. It's a lot less exciting to buy a rental property than a sports car. It's a lot less flashy to buy a piece of land than a brand new television. But the person who chooses the unglamorous path is the one who, 10 years from now, will have the freedom to buy whatever they want, because they are no longer a slave to their debts. They are a master of their assets. Let's talk about a few other examples. Many people use student loans as a form of debt to acquire an education. An education in and of itself is an asset. It can lead to higher income, more opportunities, and a more fulfilling career. But is every education an appreciating asset? Not necessarily. If you take on a massive amount of debt for a degree in a field with limited job prospects and a low income, then that debt has been used to acquire something that may not appreciate in value enough to justify the cost. But if you take on a reasonable amount of debt for a degree in a high-demand field, you have used that debt strategically. You have used it to acquire an asset, your skills, your knowledge that will appreciate in value in the marketplace, leading to a higher income that can easily pay off that debt and then build a life of abundance. The asset is your potential income, and you've used debt to increase its value. Or consider a business owner. Smart business owner uses debt not to buy fancy furniture for their office, but to invest in equipment that will increase their production capacity or to fund a marketing campaign that will generate new leads. A new piece of machinery that allows a factory to produce more goods at a faster rate is an appreciating asset. It increases the business's revenue and its overall value. Debt used for that purpose is a wise investment. Debt used for a new desk that doesn't contribute to revenue is a fool's errand. This is not about being cheap. It's about being strategic. It's about understanding that every dollar of debt you take on is a tool, and that tool must be used to create value, not to consume it. The very essence of this principle is to stop thinking like a consumer and start thinking like an owner. A consumer is focused on buying things. An owner is focused on buying things that will produce more things. A consumer sees an expensive watch and wants to buy it on credit to show off. An owner sees an expensive watch and asks, "What kind of asset could I acquire with debt that would eventually be able to buy that watch for me?" They don't just want the thing. They want the power to acquire the thing without sacrificing their financial future. The depreciating assets are the things that society tells you to acquire to feel successful. The appreciating assets are the things the truly wealthy quietly acquire to become successful. So, I challenge you. Look around your life right now. Look at the things you have. What are your appreciating assets? What are your depreciating ones? You might have a mortgage on your home liability with the potential for appreciation. You might have a loan on your car, pure depreciating asset. You might have credit card debt from a vacation, a pure depreciating liability. The first step is to see the truth. The second step is to change the way you think. From this day forward, every time you consider taking on debt, you will not just ask if it's an asset or a liability. You will ask a more powerful, more precise question. Is this asset going to appreciate or depreciate? And your answer must be that it will appreciate. You must become a relentless acquirer of things that increase in value using debt as your shovel, your lever, your tool. This is how you change the game. This is how you stop working for your money and start making your money work for you. Now, let's talk about the most important part of this whole equation. We've discussed what debt is for and what kind of assets to acquire with it, but none of that matters if you lose control. This third principle is the safety net, the guardian of your financial life. You must never let debt control you. You must always remain in control of your financial choices. The line between using debt as a powerful tool and becoming a slave to it is a very fine one, and it is crossed by millions of people every single year, often without them even realizing it. The difference isn't in the numbers, it's in the mindset. It's in the quiet discipline, the daily commitment to being the master, not the servant. When you take on a loan, you are essentially entering into an agreement to exchange a portion of your future income for something today. The wealthy understand this bargain and make sure the something today is an asset that will generate even more future income. The financially struggling, they make this same bargain for a liability that costs them even more future income. But the real danger, the real poison, is when the debt load becomes so heavy that it dictates your every move. It's when your monthly payments consume so much of your income that you have no room left to breathe, no flexibility to make new choices, and no capacity to take on new opportunities. I knew a man, a brilliant and creative artist. He had a great talent, but he also had a great desire for all the trappings of success: the flashy car, the oversized house, the extravagant vacations. He took on debt to finance all of it. At first, it seemed harmless, a little here, a little there. But soon, the sum of his monthly payments, the car loan, the mortgage, the credit card bills, became a crushing weight. He wasn't working to create art anymore. He was working to pay bills. His creative spirit was suffocated by the pressure of deadlines and the need to constantly earn more just to stay afloat. He was so busy feeding the beast of his debt that he had no time or energy left for the very thing that made him special. The debt wasn't a tool for him. It was a shackle. It stole his time, it stole his joy, and eventually, it stole his passion. He lost control, and in doing so, he lost the very freedom he was trying to buy. This is the great and terrible paradox of uncontrolled debt. People think they are buying freedom and a better life, but they are actually selling themselves into a form of indentured servitude. You become a prisoner of your paycheck. Your career path isn't chosen based on passion or opportunity. It's chosen based on which job pays enough to cover the mountain of debt you've accumulated. Your dreams are put on hold because every spare dollar, every extra hour, must go toward keeping the monster at bay. This is why financial planning is not just about numbers. It's about life planning. It's about preserving your options, your choices, and your future freedom. It's about building a life where you are the captain of the ship, not just the guy bailing water. So, how do you stay in control? It starts with a simple rule. Never take on more debt than you can comfortably service with your income, even if the asset you're acquiring is a good one. You see, the bank might approve you for a large mortgage, but that doesn't mean you should take the full amount. The bank's job is to lend money. Your job is to be wise enough to know your own limits. The market might be going up, and the temptation to leverage yourself to the hilt to acquire a dozen rental properties might be overwhelming. But a true master knows the value of a cushion. They know that markets can turn, that tenants can leave, and that unexpected expenses can and will arise. They build a life that has margins, a life that has room for error, and a life that doesn't leave them one bad month away from financial ruin. This is the difference between an amateur and a professional. The amateur gets greedy and goes all-in. The professional stays disciplined and leaves room to maneuver. Think of it like a pilot. Before a flight, a good pilot checks their fuel. They don't just put in enough to get to the destination. They put in extra for contingencies, for bad weather, for unexpected detours. They plan for the possibility of things going wrong. Most people with debt are flying on fumes. They've stretched their financial capacity to the absolute limit, and they have no reserves. One unexpected car repair, one job loss, one health emergency, and their whole world comes crashing down. They are not in control. Their circumstances are. And that is a terrifying place to be. I remember another individual who was a textbook case of this. He was a successful salesman, making a great income. He took out a big mortgage on a house he could barely afford, bought a brand new luxury SUV, and put everything on credit cards to keep up with the lifestyle. He was living at the very edge of his financial capacity. Then, the company he worked for went through a restructuring and he was laid off. He had no savings to fall back on. The income stream that was feeding his monstrous debt had dried up. Within a few months, the debt monster, which he had so carefully ignored, came for him. The bank foreclosed on the house. The car was repossessed. The credit card companies called every day. He was forced to take a job he hated just to survive, a job that paid far less than his previous one. And he spent the next several years digging out of the hole he had created. He wasn't a bad person. He was just undisciplined. He let debt be the master of his life, and it took a very heavy toll. So, how do you exercise this control? First, you must have a clear picture of your income and your expenses. You need to know exactly how much money is coming in and exactly where every dollar is going. You must have a budget, a financial roadmap. And within that roadmap, you must allocate a specific, disciplined amount to debt repayment. If you can't service the debt comfortably with your current income, you shouldn't take it on. Second, you must have a solid emergency fund. Before you take on any significant debt, Evan, for a good asset chew, should have at least 6 months of living expenses saved up in a separate account. This is your safety net. This is the fuel for your plane in case of turbulence. This is the financial freedom that allows you to weather any storm without having to take on more debt or sell a valuable asset at a loss. Finally, and perhaps most importantly, you must have a strong sense of purpose. When you have a clear vision of where you are going to build a business, to acquire a portfolio of rental properties, to achieve financial independence by a certain age, becomes much easier to say no to the instant gratification that so often leads to bad debt. Your purpose becomes your guiding star. When you are tempted to buy something you can't afford, you ask yourself, does this bring me closer to my purpose, or does it take me further away? The answer will almost always be that the liability takes you further away. The debt for the appreciating asset that moves you closer. The wealthy understand that true freedom is not the ability to buy anything you want on credit. It is the ability to walk away from a bad deal, to say no to a temptation, and to make choices based on your values and your vision, not on the demands of a bill collector. They understand that a little bit of short-term discipline is a small price to pay for a lifetime of financial control. They don't just manage their debt, they master it. They make sure the debt is working for them, and they never, ever let it get to the point where they are working for it. That, my friends, is the most powerful choice you can make. Now, let's talk about a principle that separates the dreamers from the builders, the hope givers from the doers. It's the difference between casting a seed on the wind and planting it in carefully prepared soil. This fourth principle is simple, but its power is immense. You must always borrow with a clear, specific repayment plan. You should never, ever take on what I call blind debt. What is blind debt? It is debt taken on in the dark, without a map or a destination. It's when you go to the store and get a credit card because you want a new television, and you tell yourself you'll just pay it off later without having any idea how or when that will happen. It is a debt that you hope will take care of itself. And hope, my friends, is not a strategy. Blind debt is the single greatest reason people find themselves in a financial hole they cannot escape. They take on a student loan for a degree they're not passionate about, hoping it will lead to a good job. They buy a car they can't afford, hoping their next raise will cover the payments. This isn't a plan. It's a gamble. And in the world of finance, gambling with your future is a game you will almost always lose. The wealthy understand that debt is a two-way street. When they take on a loan, they do so with absolute clarity on how it will be repaid, and not just from their current income. They look at the asset they are acquiring, and they build the repayment plan around the income that asset will generate. The repayment plan isn't a vague notion. It's a spreadsheet. It's a series of clear, actionable steps. They know exactly how much rent they will need to charge, how much profit their new business will need to generate, or how much their investment is projected to return to not only cover the cost of the debt, but to also put more money in their pocket. This is not about hoping for the best. It's about planning for the best and then executing that plan with military precision. They are not just borrowing money. They are engineering their own success. Let me tell you a story about two friends, Mark and Sam. They both wanted to get into real estate. Mark, full of ambition and enthusiasm, saw a great deal on a duplex and rushed to get a loan. He was so excited about the potential that he didn't bother to run the numbers. He figured he'd find tenants and the rent would somehow cover the mortgage. He was so focused on the excitement of being a property owner that he completely neglected the details. He bought the duplex, but the tenants he found were a few $100s short of covering the mortgage each month. And he had no plan for the vacancy periods or unexpected repairs. He was in a constant state of stress, always scrambling to come up with the extra money. The property, a potential asset, became a source of constant stress and worry because he took on blind debt. Sam, on the other hand, was slower, more methodical. He found a similar property, but before he even applied for a loan, he spent weeks creating a meticulous repayment plan. He researched the average rent in the area, he factored in a conservative vacancy rate, and he set aside money for maintenance and a potential property manager. He knew exactly what the monthly payment on the loan would be, and he made sure that his projected income from the property was significantly more than the cost of the loan, including all of the contingencies he had planned for. When he finally took on the debt, it wasn't an act of hope. It was an act of confidence. He knew the numbers. He knew the plan. The debt didn't control him. He controlled it. And when he eventually bought the property, it was a source of income and peace of mind, not a source of stress. The difference wasn't the property, it was the plan. Blind debt is the friend you lend money to who says, "I'll pay you back later," but can't tell you how or when. It's a promise with no substance. Planned debt is a business deal with a clear contract, a timeline, and a guaranteed return on investment. The financially successful don't just ask, "Can I get this loan?" They ask, "How will this loan pay for itself?" This shift in thinking is fundamental. It moves you from being a consumer to being a financier. It moves you from a position of reaction to a position of proaction. Think about credit card debt. This is perhaps the most insidious form of blind debt. People swipe the card, promising themselves they'll pay it off next month, but they don't have a specific plan to do so. They just hope they will have enough extra money. And when they don't, the interest rates, often in the double digits, begin to pile up. The interest is like a thief in the night, silently stealing their wealth. This isn't debt taken on to acquire an appreciating asset. It's debt taken on to acquire a lifestyle, and it's repaid with no plan, no foresight, and no discipline. A credit card can be a useful tool for a short-term planned expense, but for the majority of people, it is a tool for blind debt, and it is a path to financial ruin. So, how do you create a clear repayment plan? First, you must know your numbers. You must know exactly how much the loan will cost you in total, including interest. Don't just look at the monthly payment. Look at the lifetime cost of the debt. Second, you must identify a specific income stream that will be responsible for paying that debt. If you are taking on debt for a rental property, the rent is the income stream. If you are taking on debt for a business, the revenue from the business is the income stream. This is why you must never use debt to finance a liability, because a liability does not have an income stream that can repay the debt. Third, you must create a timeline. You must know exactly when you will pay off that debt. This isn't just a general idea, it's a specific date on a calendar. When you have a timeline, you can see your progress. You can celebrate milestones, and you can course correct if you fall behind. This is the power of a plan. A plan turns a vague aspiration into a tangible reality. It turns a hope into a certainty. It gives you a roadmap for the future, and it allows you to sleep at night, knowing that you are in control of your financial destiny. This is what separates the dreamers from the builders. The builder doesn't just look at a blueprint and hope the building will stand. They look at the blueprint. They see the foundation, they see the walls, they see the roof, and they have a clear plan for every single step of the process. They know what materials they will use, and they know the exact sequence of events. They don't take on a project blindly. And you should not take on debt blindly. This is not just about financial success. It is about personal character. It is about discipline. It is about foresight. It is about being a person who says what they mean and means what they say. When you borrow money with a clear repayment plan, you are making a promise not just to a bank, but to yourself. You are saying, "I am capable, I am disciplined, and I am in control of my financial future." This is the foundation of self-respect. And without self-respect, no amount of money will ever bring you true happiness. So, I challenge you. The next time you feel the urge to take on debt, whether it's for a new car or a new business, stop. Take a step back. Before you sign anything, before you make any commitment, get out a piece of paper and a pen. Write down the amount of the debt. Then, write down the specific income stream that will be responsible for paying it off. Then, write down a timeline. And if you cannot clearly and specifically answer those three questions, then the answer is simple. Do not take on the debt. Because to take on debt without a plan is to invite chaos into your financial life. To take on debt with a plan is to invite freedom. This is the difference between a life of constant struggle and a life of financial mastery. This is your choice. Now, we must talk about the most powerful enemy of long-term wealth building. An enemy that hides in plain sight. An enemy that whispers to you in the aisles of every store and on every billboard. That enemy is the desire for instant gratification. And this brings us to our fifth principle. Never use debt for instant gratification. You must only ever use it for long-term wealth building. Most people have it backward. They think debt is for today. They see something they want, a new gadget, a flashy car, a lavish vacation, and they want it now. They don't have the cash, so they take on debt. They trade their financial future for a momentary feeling of pleasure, for a brief rush of owning something new. The pleasure is fleeting, but the debt, my friends, is not. The joy of the purchase lasts a day, maybe a week, but the payments can last for years. You are literally borrowing from your future self to pay for a moment of fleeting enjoyment. And your future self, who has to make those payments, will not thank you. They will be angry and resentful that you saddled them with the burden. The financially wise, they understand the profound power of delayed gratification. They know that the pain of discipline today is a small price to pay for the reward of freedom tomorrow. They see debt not as a tool for today's pleasure, but as a lever for tomorrow's power. They use debt to acquire an asset business, a rental property, a piece of land that won't necessarily give them instant pleasure, but will give them enduring financial peace and growing income for the rest of their lives. They are willing to drive an older car and wear simpler clothes today, so that 10 years from now, they will have the choice to do whatever they want, whenever they want. This is the ultimate form of self-respect. Let me tell you about a conversation I had with a young man. He was making a decent salary, but he was always complaining about being broke. One day, he showed me a new, expensive watch he had just bought on credit. He was so proud of it. I looked at him and said, "That watch looks nice. What is its purpose?" He said, "What do you mean?" "It tells time." I said, "I have a watch that tells time too, and it cost a fraction of what you paid for that one. So, what is its real purpose?" He thought for a moment and said, "Well, it makes me feel good. It makes me feel successful." I said, "I understand that. But what if, instead of using debt for that feeling, you would use that same money for a down payment on a small business or a rental property? In a few years, that business could be bringing in enough income to buy you a dozen of those watches with cash. The watch gives you a feeling of success today. The asset gives you the power of success for a lifetime. One is instant gratification, the other is long-term wealth building." He was silent, the truth of the statement hitting him. He had traded real power for a fleeting feeling. And he had used debt to do it. This is the great battle in our lives. The battle between today and tomorrow. Our culture is built on the religion of now. We are told to live in the moment, to treat ourselves, to you only live once. And these are not bad ideas in themselves, but when they become the justification for using debt to buy liabilities, they become a dangerous trap. The financially wise, they understand that you can't get everything today. You have to earn it. And the way you earn it is by having the discipline to forego a little bit of pleasure today for a whole lot of power and freedom tomorrow. Think of it like building a fire. The instant gratification seeker throws all their kindling, all their small sticks onto the fire at once. It creates a big, brief flash of light and warmth, but then it's gone, and they are left in the cold with no fuel left to create a lasting fire. The long-term wealth builder, they take a little bit of their kindling and carefully arrange it. They light it slowly. And once it's a steady flame, they start adding bigger and bigger logs, the assets, so that the fire burns for days, for weeks, for a lifetime. The initial act is slower, less flashy, but the result is enduring warmth and light. I knew a couple who, every year, would take on debt to finance a lavish vacation. They would post beautiful pictures on social media and talk about their amazing experiences. The vacation would last a week, maybe 2, but the debt would last for a year. They were living for the moment, and their life was a series of moments, all of which were a little bit smaller than the one before, because they were always a year behind financially. They were using debt to consume, to take from their future, not to build for their future. They were on the hedonic treadmill, always chasing the next high, with debt as the fuel for their endless race. Another couple, who made the same amount of money, lived a different life. They took on a little debt, a loan, to purchase a small, simple property. It wasn't in a glamorous location, and it didn't look great in pictures, but it was cash flow positive. Every month, the rent came in, and it covered the mortgage. They didn't go on a lavish vacation every year. They took a small, simple one and paid for it in cash. They used debt to build, not to consume. 5 years later, the first couple was still taking on debt for vacations, but they were no closer to financial freedom. The second couple, they had paid off the debt on their first property and had enough saved to buy a second one. And then a third. The debt they took on didn't buy them a memory. It bought them a future. It bought them the power to make new choices. It bought them the ability to one day take a vacation whenever they want, for as long as they want, and pay for it with the income from their assets. This principle is about character. It's about having the strength to stand against the current of consumerism and choose a different path. It's about understanding that the temporary high of a new purchase is nothing compared to the enduring peace of financial security. It's about knowing that the feeling of a new car won't last, but the feeling of waking up without a financial worry will. The truly wealthy, they understand that life isn't a race to acquire the most stuff. It's a marathon of building a life of freedom. And the tools you use in that marathon matter. Debt used for instant gratification is like running a race with weights tied to your ankles. It will slow you down and exhaust you before you ever get to the finish line. But debt used for long-term wealth building is like getting a powerful tailwind. It will propel you forward effortlessly to a place you could never have reached on your own. So, I want you to ask yourself, what are you using debt for? Is it for a fleeting moment of joy? Or is it for a lifetime of freedom? Is it for a memory you can show off? Or is it for an asset that will quietly work for you while you live your life? The choice is yours. The path to wealth is not about doing what feels good today. It's about doing what is right today, so that you can feel good for the rest of your life. This is the difference between a life of perpetual struggle and a life of profound fulfillment. This is the power of delayed gratification. And it is a choice that will change your life. Now, let's talk about a powerful concept, one that can accelerate your journey to wealth faster than almost anything else. It's a word that sounds sophisticated, but the idea is simple. Leverage. This is our sixth principle. You must leverage debt to multiply opportunities, but you must never, under any circumstances, gamble with it. Leverage is nothing more than using a small amount of your own resources and a larger amount of borrowed resources to acquire an asset. Think of it like a lever. You can use a small amount of force on one end of a lever to lift a heavy object on the other end. That's what smart debt does for you. It allows you to use a small amount of your capital, your down payment, to control a much larger asset. It says the difference between trying to push a heavy rock with your bare hands and using a lever to move it with ease. The wealthy understand this. They don't use just their own money. They use other people's money, the bank's money, to acquire and control high-value assets. Consider a simple example. Let's say you have $25,000 to invest. You could go and buy a plot of land for $25,000. And if that land doubles in value, you've made a $25,000 profit. That's a good return. But what if you used that $25,000 as a down payment on a $100,000 property? Using a loan for the remaining $75,000? Now you control a $100,000 asset. That property doubles in value to $200,000. You've not only paid off the loan, but you've also made a $100,000 profit from your initial $25,000 investment. You didn't just double your money, you quadrupled it. The debt was the lever. It magnified your opportunity. This is how the wealthy build empires. They use leverage to acquire more assets, to grow their portfolio, and to create a compound effect that multiplies their wealth exponentially. This is the wise use of debt. It is a calculated strategic move based on a solid asset and a clear plan. But here's where the great line is crossed. The line between leverage and gambling is razor thin, and the consequences of crossing it are devastating. Gambling with debt is using borrowed money for an investment with no clear plan, with no underlying asset, and with a high degree of risk. It's when you take a loan and invest it in a speculative stock, hoping for a quick gain. It's when you borrow money to start a business that has no proven model or market. It's when you take out a loan and try to time a market, thinking you can get in at the bottom and out at the top. This isn't a strategy, it's a blind bet. And a blind bet with borrowed money is the fastest way to financial ruin. I knew a man, a bright and ambitious person, who was so caught up in the idea of getting rich quick that he lost his way. He saw a friend make a lot of money in the stock market and decided he wanted to do the same. But he didn't have enough capital. So he took out a personal loan, not for an asset, but for a gamble. He invested the borrowed money in a volatile stock, convinced it would go to the moon. For a while, it seemed like he was right. The stock went up, and he felt like a genius. But then, the market turned, and the stock plummeted. He not only lost his entire investment, but he was left with a loan he had to repay, with no asset to show for it. He didn't use debt to build, he used it to bet. And when the bet failed, he was left with the full weight of the loss, with no way to pay for it. He was a perfect example of someone who tried to leverage, but instead, he gambled. The key difference is the underlying asset. A wise investor uses debt to acquire something real and tangible, like business that generates cash flow, a property that produces rent. They are not betting on a whim. They are investing in something with intrinsic value, something that will work for them whether the market goes up or down. A gambler, on the other hand, is betting on a number, on a stock, on a speculative trend. They are betting on something that has no intrinsic value, something that could go to zero overnight, leaving them with nothing but the debt. The gambler is trying to get rich quick, while the wise investor is building wealth slowly and surely, piece by piece, asset by asset. Think of it like a farmer. A wise farmer uses a loan to buy more land, a more efficient tractor, or better seeds. These are all assets that will increase their crop yield, which in turn will generate more revenue to pay off the loan and increase their profit. This is leverage. This is a wise, calculated risk. A foolish farmer, however, might use a loan to bet on a certain crop, a crop that has no proven market. Or they might gamble their harvest on a bet that the price will skyrocket. This is gambling. The wise farmer is betting on his ability to work the land and the land's ability to produce. The foolish farmer is betting on luck. In the long run, the wise farmer always wins. The media, the internet, and social media are filled with stories of people who made a fortune overnight by making a risky bet. But for every one of those stories, there are thousands of people who tried and failed, who lost everything and who are now in deep financial trouble. The stories of the failures are never told. They are the silent majority. The path to wealth is not about taking huge, speculative risks. It's about taking wise, calculated risks. It's about using the powerful tool of debt with a clear purpose and a strong foundation. So, how do you know if you're leveraging or gambling? Ask yourself this simple question. If the value of my investment went down by 50% tomorrow, would I still be okay? If the answer is no, if you would be financially ruined, then you are gambling and you are using too much leverage. A wise person uses a conservative amount of leverage, a comfortable margin of safety, so that even in the worst-case scenario, they will still be in control. They understand that the goal is not just to get rich, but to stay rich. The gambler, on the other hand, is so focused on the upside that they completely ignore the downside. This principle is about character. It's about having the humility to know what you do know and the discipline to stay within your limits. It's about understanding that wealth is not a sprint, it's a marathon. It's not about a single lucky break. It's about a series of disciplined choices. You can use debt to run faster, to multiply your efforts, to get ahead of the crowd. But you must never use it as a shortcut to get rich quick, because there are no shortcuts. There is only a straight, steady path of wise choices. And it is a path that you must walk with discipline, foresight, and an unwavering commitment to a long-term plan. This is how you use debt as a lever, not as a lottery ticket. Now, let's get down to the brass tacks, the cold, hard numbers that separate a wise financial decision from a foolish one. This seventh principle is the absolute foundation of all profitable debt. You must only use debt when the returns on your investment are greater than the cost of borrowing. This is not a suggestion. This is a non-negotiable law of the universe, and to ignore it is to invite financial ruin. Every loan, every credit card, every line of credit has a cost. That cost is the interest rate. It is the price you pay to use other people's money, and this is where most people fail. They look at the monthly payment, not the total cost. They don't take the time to calculate whether the asset they are acquiring will generate enough income to not only cover the payment, but to also generate a profit for them. They are so focused on getting what they want right now that they completely ignore the fundamental arithmetic of wealth building. They are buying something on credit at a high interest rate, and that item is costing them far more than they could ever hope to gain from it. Think of it like this. You are a business, and every choice you make is a business decision. A wise business owner would never borrow money at a 10% interest rate to fund a project that they know will only return 5%. That's a losing proposition. It's a guaranteed loss. And yet, this is exactly what millions of people do every day. They borrow money at credit card interest rates, which can be anywhere from 15% to 25% or even higher too. Buy consumer goods that will return a solid 0% in income and will depreciate in value every single day. The numbers don't lie. This is not a path to wealth. It is a path to poverty. It is a slow, methodical transfer of your future income to the financial institutions that lend you the money. Let's get very specific with an example. Now, consider the alternative. You see a car you've always wanted. It costs $50,000, and you can get a loan at 7% interest. That car, a pure liability, will generate a 0% return. It will not put a single dollar into your pocket. In fact, it will do the opposite. It will lose value the moment you drive it off the lot. In this scenario, you are borrowing money at 7% to acquire an asset that returns negative dollars. The difference between the cost of the loan and the return on the asset is not a profit. It is a profound loss. This is not a choice you make on the path to wealth. It is a choice you make on the path to financial stagnation. This principle is about more than just numbers. It is about self-discipline and financial literacy. Many people are afraid of numbers, so they just avoid them. They make financial decisions based on emotion, what feels good, on what they want in the moment rather than on logic and mathematics. But the universe doesn't care about your feelings. It cares about numbers. The bank doesn't care about your feelings. It cares about numbers. And if your numbers don't add up, you will lose. It's as simple as that. I had a conversation with a young man who wanted to get a loan to start a new business. He was passionate and excited, but he didn't have a business plan. I asked him, "What is your projected profit margin on this product?" He didn't know. I asked, "What is the cost of the loan, including interest and fees?" He didn't know that either. I told him, "You're asking me to give you a tool for a journey you haven't planned. You're asking to borrow money to start a business that you don't even know will be profitable. You must do the numbers first. You must know with absolute certainty that your projected returns are greater than your projected costs. If you don't know that, you are not starting a business. You are taking a blind risk, and you are inviting financial failure." He took my advice, went back to the drawing board, and came back 6 months later with a detailed business plan. The plan showed him that his initial idea was not profitable, and he had to change it. He was grateful because he learned that a bit of discipline and foresight can save you a world of pain and a lifetime of regret. This is the very essence of wealth building. It's not about finding a magic formula. It's about doing the work, running the numbers, and making a cold, logical decision. You must become a master of the math. You must know your interest rates, your return on investment, and your total cost. You must be able to look at any potential debt and say, "This is a good deal, because the money I'm using is going to generate more money than it costs me." Or you must be able to say, "This is a bad deal, and I will not touch it." The ability to make that distinction is the key to all financial success. Think of it like being a good gardener. A good gardener doesn't just plant a seed and hope it grows. They study the soil, they know the seasons, and they understand that if they plant the seed in the right place, it will grow and multiply. Your money is the seed, the asset is the soil, and the interest rate is the cost of the water. You must make sure that the growth of your plant is greater than the cost of your water. If the water is too expensive, the plant will never grow, and you will have wasted your time and your resources. So I want you to make a commitment to yourself right now. From this moment on, you will not take on any debt without first running the numbers. You will look at the interest rate, you will calculate the total cost, and you will compare it to the projected return on your investment. You will not buy a liability that costs you more than it gives you. You will not take on a loan that puts you in a position of guaranteed loss. You will become a master of the math. You will become a disciplined, strategic financial manager of your own life. This is the only way to ensure that your debt is a servant, not a master, and that your life is a story of wealth and prosperity, not one of struggle and regret. This is the difference between a life of financial freedom and a life of constant burden. Now, let's talk about the cancer of the financial world. It's a disease that doesn't just slow you down. It devours your wealth, your future, and your peace of mind. This is our 8th principle. You must avoid toxic debt like credit cards and payday loans at all costs. They are not tools for building wealth. They are instruments of its destruction. Most of the debt we've talked about so far, mortgages, business loans, strategic lines of credit, can be good debt. It can be a tool, a lever for creation. But toxic debt is a different animal entirely. It is debt that is designed to keep you trapped. It is a high-interest, short-term fix that provides a brief illusion of relief, while it silently eats away at your financial foundation. It is the kind of debt that the wealthy not only avoid but actively warn against. They understand that these forms of debt are the very antithesis of wealth building. Consider the credit card. It is a beautiful and elegant tool for convenience. It allows you to buy something now and pay for it later. Used properly, it can build your credit score and even give you rewards. But used improperly, it is a financial vice. The average American family carries a significant amount of credit card debt. And for what? For consumer goods, for a vacation, for a meal they couldn't afford. They are paying exorbitant interest rates, often in the high double digits, for things that are long gone or have lost all their value. It is the ultimate form of a losing proposition. The joy of the purchase is fleeting, but the burden of the payments and the soul-crushing interest lasts for months, even years. It is a slow and methodical transfer of your wealth to the banks, and it is a trap that once you fall into, is incredibly difficult to climb out of. I knew a family who was always just getting by. They had a decent income, but their lifestyle always exceeded it. They used credit cards to make up the difference, telling themselves they would just pay it off next month. But next month never came. They had a small, manageable amount of debt at first, but over time, as the interest piled on and they continued to use their cards to cover daily expenses, the debt grew into a monstrous, unmanageable sum. To consume their income, it consumed their energy. They weren't working for themselves anymore. They were working for their credit card companies. They were making payments for things they couldn't even remember buying. The debt had become a living, breathing entity, a parasite that fed off their income and their future. They were stuck in a cycle of earning just enough to pay the interest, never making a dent in the principal. The debt wasn't a tool. It was an anchor. It held them firmly in place while their dreams of a better life drifted further and further away. Now, let's talk about an even more predatory form of toxic debt: the payday loan. This is not a tool. This is a weapon. Payday loans are designed for one purpose and one purpose only: to trap desperate people in a cycle of debt they can never escape. The interest rates are astronomical, often reaching into the triple digits. People take out these loans for a short-term emergency: a car repair, a medical bill, a small expense they can't cover. They promise to pay it back in 2 weeks. But when the day comes, they can't. So they have to take out another loan to pay off the first one, and the cycle begins. This is not a financial solution. It is a financial death spiral. It is a form of modern-day slavery, where you are not a person, but a host for a financial parasite that will not let you go. The wealthy understand that these kinds of loans are not just bad, they are evil. They are to be avoided at all costs, like a plague. The wealthy understand the power of compound interest, but they use it to their advantage, not against them. They invest their money, and it grows exponentially over time. The financially struggling, they are on the other side of that equation. They are paying compound interest on their credit card debt and their payday loans, and it is destroying them exponentially. The very force that makes the rich richer is the same force that makes the poor poorer. It is the same principle, but with a different direction. You are either using it to grow your wealth, or you are letting it destroy it. So, how do you avoid this financial poison? First, you must have an emergency fund. Before you take on any debt, before you even think about a credit card, you must have a safety net of 3 to 6 months of living expenses saved up in a separate account. This is your shield. This is the thing that will protect you from a surprise expense that would otherwise send you into the waiting arms of a high-interest lender. This is the financial peace of mind that allows you to say no to a payday loan. This is the financial discipline that saves you from a lifetime of worry. Second, you must learn to live below your means. This is the most important lesson in all of finance. If you don't have the cash to buy something, you don't buy it. If you have to take on debt for a consumer good, you can't afford it. It's as simple as that. There are no two ways around it. The culture of buy now, pay later is a trap, and you must refuse to fall into it. You must have the courage to say, I will not spend money I do not have on things I do not need. This is not about deprivation. This is about liberation. It is about freeing yourself from the shackles of debt and the demands of a lifestyle you cannot sustain. Finally, you must be honest with yourself. If you are struggling with credit card debt, you must admit it. You must stop using the cards, and you must create a clear, disciplined plan to pay off the debt, starting with the card with the highest interest rate. This is not a time for excuses. This is a time for action. This is a time to be a warrior, to fight for your financial freedom, to refuse to let a piece of plastic dictate your life. This is the moment you take back control. The wealthy avoid toxic debt because they understand its purpose. They know it is a tool for control, and they refuse to be controlled. They would rather drive an old car and live in a simple home and have peace of mind than have a brand new car and a beautiful house and be a slave to their debts. They value freedom and peace of mind more than they value the fleeting feeling of owning something new. This is the key difference between a life of financial mastery and a life of constant struggle. The choice is yours. This is a battle you must fight, and it is a battle you must win. Because if you don't, your financial future is not your own. Now, let's talk about the most powerful tool you have at your disposal. A tool that can make all the difference between a life of financial struggle and a life of financial mastery. It's not an investment. It's not an asset. It is knowledge. And this brings us to our 9th principle. You must surround yourself with financial education so that debt works for you. not against you. The financially successful don't just stumble into wealth, they are students of it. They understand that the world of money, of finance, is a language. And if you don't speak that language, you will forever be at the mercy of those who do. The difference between a master of debt and a victim of debt is not a matter of luck or circumstance. It is a matter of education. The wealthy are constantly learning, reading books, attending seminars, and seeking out mentors. They understand that knowledge is not just power, it is the ultimate leverage. It allows them to make wise decisions, to spot opportunities others miss, and to use tools like debt with a level of precision that is impossible for the uneducated. Think of it like being a doctor. You would never trust a person to perform surgery on you who hadn't gone to medical school. They don't have the knowledge, the training, the discipline, or the understanding of the human body. And yet, people make financial decisions every single day that could have a bigger impact on their life than a surgery. And they do so with absolutely no financial education. Pia, they are flying blind. They are making life-altering choices based on what feels right, or what their friends are doing, or what the advertising tells them to do. And in doing so, they are signing over their future to those who have taken the time to learn the rules of the game. I knew a man, let's call him Steve, who inherited a substantial amount of money from his family. He had a great opportunity to use that money to build a life of financial freedom, but he had no financial education. He didn't know the difference between a good investment and a bad one, between an asset and a liability. So he made decisions based on what seemed good at the time. He bought a flashy car, a bigger house than he needed, and invested in a speculative business because a friend told him it was a sure thing. Within a few years, he had spent all of his inheritance and taken on a substantial amount of debt to maintain a lifestyle he couldn't afford. He wasn't a bad person. He was just uneducated. He had all the tools, all the resources, but he lacked the knowledge to use them wisely. He thought money was a game of chance, when in reality, it is a game of skill. And skill, my friends, is built on knowledge. On the other hand, I know a woman who started with nothing. She had no inheritance, no special opportunities, but she had a thirst for knowledge. She read every book she could on personal finance, on real estate, on business. She found mentors who were where she wanted to be financially, and she listened to their advice. She learned that a loan wasn't a burden. It was a powerful tool. She learned how to calculate return on investment, how to find good deals, and how to negotiate a contract. She took on a small amount of debt to buy her first rental property. And she did so with a level of confidence and precision that most people would never have because she had done her homework. That first property led to a second, and a third, and a fourth. In less than a decade, she had built a multi-million-dollar real estate empire. Her success wasn't an accident. It was the direct result of her commitment to financial education. The world of finance is a complex one, filled with pitfalls and traps for the uneducated. You can get a mortgage with an interest rate that is a point higher than you should be paying. You can get a credit card with hidden fees and clauses. You can invest in a stock that is about to go bankrupt. But when you are financially educated, you see these things coming. You read the fine print. You ask the right questions. You understand the language. You are not a victim. You are a master. And this mastery gives you the power to use debt, to use money, to use time, to your advantage. The world is filled with books, podcasts, seminars, and mentors who are willing to share their knowledge with you. The only thing standing between you and that knowledge is your own commitment. You have to be willing to spend an hour a day reading a book instead of watching television. You have to be willing to spend your weekends at a seminar instead of a football game. You have to be willing to invest in your own education. And the return on that investment will be greater than any stock, any property, any business. Because when you invest in yourself, you are investing in the one asset that will appreciate for the rest of your life. This is not a matter of being a genius. It is a matter of being disciplined. The wealthy are not smarter than everyone else. They are just more committed to their own education. They know that the lessons they learn today will save them millions of dollars in the future. They understand that a little bit of knowledge today is the ultimate form of leverage, a powerful lever that can lift the entire weight of their financial future. So, I want you to ask yourself a powerful question. Are you a student of wealth or a spectator of it? Are you taking the time to learn the rules of the game, or are you just hoping for the best? Are you surrounding yourself with people who will teach you, or with people who will just reinforce your bad habits? The answers to these questions will tell you everything you need to know about where you are headed. To truly master debt, you must first master yourself. You must master your mind, your habits, and your commitment to your own growth. You must make the decision once and for all that you will not be a victim of a financial system you don't understand. You will not allow high interest rates and hidden fees to steal your future. You will not make foolish decisions because you are too lazy to learn the right ones. You will become a student of the game. You will become an expert in your own financial life. And when you do, debt will no longer be a source of stress and worry. It will be a source of power and opportunity. It will be a tool in your hand, and you will be its master. This is the ultimate form of financial literacy, and it is the single greatest skill you will ever acquire. Now, we arrive at the final, most profound lesson on debt. We've talked about using debt for assets, not liabilities, for appreciating assets, not depreciating ones. We've talked about the importance of control, of having a clear repayment plan, of avoiding toxic debt, and of mastering financial education. But all of that knowledge, all of that discipline, is for naught if you only use it for personal comfort. The truly wealthy, the people who leave a lasting impact, don't just use debt to get ahead themselves. They use it as a tool to build generational wealth, to create a legacy that will outlast them. This 10th principle is the ultimate shift in mindset. Use debt as a tool to build generational wealth, not just personal comfort. Most people are building a house of comfort. They use debt to buy a bigger house for themselves, a nicer car for themselves, a more lavish vacation for themselves. They are a one-man show, building a life that feels good and looks good in the moment. But the moment they stop working, the payments stop. The assets, the liabilities start to crumble, and their children are left with nothing. The legacy they leave is a series of beautiful memories and a lot of debt. This is not the way of the wealthy. The wealthy are not just building for themselves. They are building a family name, an empire that will provide for their children, their grandchildren, and their great-grandchildren. They see themselves not as the end of a line, but as the first link in a chain of prosperity. Think about a man who uses debt to acquire a business. He could just work the business, pay himself a good salary, and enjoy a comfortable life. But the wise man does more. He uses the profits from that business to acquire more assets, more real estate, more businesses, more investments. He is using the income from his initial leveraged debt to create a portfolio of assets. And he is teaching his children the principles behind it all. He is teaching them how to find good deals, how to run a business, how to manage debt. He is not just giving them money. He is giving them the knowledge and the assets to multiply that money. He is using debt not just to build a personal income stream, but to create a financial ecosystem that will sustain his family for generations. The original debt was just the first stone and the foundation of a mighty fortress. Let's take real estate as a prime example. A man could use debt to buy a beautiful home for his family and live a comfortable life. But the wise man does more. He uses debt to buy that home, but he also uses debt to buy a rental property. He teaches his children about the rental property. He lets them see how the tenants pay the mortgage and how the asset appreciates in value. And when he passes on, he doesn't just leave a house to his children. He leaves them a portfolio of properties that are generating passive income. He leaves them an entire system, a machine that is working for them. He leaves them the gift of financial freedom. Use debt to buy assets, and those assets will continue to provide for his family long after he is gone. This is the difference between a legacy of comfort and a legacy of wealth. The difference in mindset is monumental. The person building for personal comfort is focused on themselves. What can I get out of this? The person building for a legacy is focused on their family, on their community, on a vision that is bigger than themselves. They ask, how can I use this to create something that will outlive me? This is a shift from a consumer mindset to a creator mindset. A consumer buys things that are used up. A creator buys things that create more things. And debt, when used by a creator, is the most powerful tool for creation in the world. Think about the great families of history. They didn't just get lucky. They used every tool at their disposal, including debt, to build empires. They used debt to buy land, to build factories, to start businesses. They saw the world not as a place to take from, but as a place to build in. They understood that the greatest joy is not in consuming a finite resource, but in creating a new one. They were not just a person. They were a movement, a force of nature, a living testament to the power of a long-term vision. So, I want to leave you with this final, powerful idea. Every financial decision you make is not just for you. It is for your children, it is for your family, it is for your community. Every time you are tempted to use debt for a fleeting pleasure, a moment of comfort, I want you to ask yourself, is this what I want to leave to my children? Do I want to leave them with a collection of bills, a mountain of debt, and the same struggles I faced? Or do I want to leave them with a portfolio of assets, a legacy of wealth, and the freedom to build their own lives on a solid foundation? The answer to that question will change every financial decision you make from this day forward. This is not just about money. It is about character. It is about love. It is about a vision that is bigger than yourself. It is about understanding that your life and your financial choices are not just a personal story. They are a chapter in the story of your family. And you have the power to make this a chapter of triumph, a chapter of prosperity, and a chapter that sets the stage for a future of unlimited possibility. This is the power of using debt to build generational wealth. This is the final lesson, and it is the most important one you will ever learn. And so, we come to the end of our time together. We've walked a long road. We've looked at debt not with fear, but with a clear eye. We've taken a powerful and often misunderstood force and broken it down into 10 simple yet profound principles. You've heard me talk about the difference between a liability and an asset, a fundamental distinction that separates those who struggle from those who build. We've discussed the importance of chasing appreciating assets, those that grow in value, and of leaving behind the things that shrink in your hand. We've explored the sacred duty of staying in control of your financial life, never allowing debt to dictate your choices or steal your freedom. We've learned that a plan is everything a clear map for a journey that others take blindly. We've talked about the immense power of delayed gratification, the quiet sacrifice today for the explosive growth of tomorrow. We've drawn a line in the sand between wise leverage and foolish gambling, understanding that you build wealth with skill, not with luck. We've learned to run the numbers, to master the simple arithmetic that ensures your returns are always greater than your costs. We've named and called out the toxic debt that poisons so many lives, and we've made a commitment to avoid it like a plague. We've embraced the life-changing power of education, recognizing that knowledge is the ultimate asset, a tool that can never be repossessed. And finally, we've raised our vision to a higher purpose, looking beyond personal comfort to the grand design of building generational wealth. I want you to take a moment and just feel the weight of these truths. It's not about complex formulas or market timing. It's about a profound shift in how you see the world. For most of your life, you were probably told that debt was a burden, a thing to be feared, a heavy chain you had to carry. But if you have listened closely, you now understand that debt is not a chain. It is a tool. And like any tool, a hammer, a saw, a paintbrush, its power lies not in the tool itself, but in the hands of the master craftsman who wields it. A fool with a hammer can destroy a house, but a master carpenter can build a masterpiece. A novice with debt can destroy their financial life, but a wise and disciplined person can build a monument of prosperity that will stand for generations. You are now at a crossroads. You can go back to seeing debt as something that happens to you, something to be endured, a constant source of stress. Or you can stand up and declare that you are the master of your financial life. You are the architect of your destiny. You are the captain of your ship, and you will use every available tool, including debt, to sail to the shores of freedom and abundance. You will not be a victim of circumstances. You will be a creator of them. This isn't just about money. It's about character. The journey to financial mastery is a journey of self-discovery, of discipline, and of profound personal growth. It's about learning to say no to the small, fleeting pleasures so that you can say yes to a life of great purpose. It's about building the internal fortitude to make decisions based on what you know is right, not just on what feels good. It's about cultivating the kind of foresight that allows you to see the magnificent forest of your future, even when you are standing among the simple trees of today. The people who truly get ahead, the people who build something great, are not the people who avoid all risk. They are the people who manage it with wisdom and courage. They understand that a little bit of debt, when used for a great purpose, is a small price to pay for a life of boundless opportunity. Your future self is waiting for you. That person, years from now, who will have achieved financial independence, who will have a portfolio of assets working for them, who will have the freedom to make choices based on their passions and their dreams. That person is watching you right now. They are hoping you will listen to these lessons. They are hoping you will have the discipline to apply them. They are hoping you will take this knowledge and use it as a powerful lever to pry open a world of opportunity. Do not disappoint them. Do not disappoint yourself. The person you are today is building the person you will be tomorrow. And the way you handle debt today will determine the kind of life you live for the rest of your days. So, I invite you to see a new picture of your future. A future where you are in control. A future where you are not just working to pay bills, but where your money is working for you. A future where you have built a legacy, not just a lifestyle. A future where you have the freedom to give, to create, and to live a life of profound meaning. This is not a dream. This is a plan. And you now have the tools to begin building it, one wise choice at a time. The knowledge is yours. The tools are yours. Now, the choice is also yours. Now, the choice is also yours. And as you go on this journey, I want to invite you to join a community of people who are also on this path. If this message has resonated with you, if it has sparked something inside you, then I ask you to take a moment. Like this video, subscribe to this channel. Share this message with someone you care about, because when we share knowledge, we don't just empower ourselves, we empower everyone around us. We begin a movement of wisdom, a movement of abundance, a movement of freedom. Your journey begins now. Go and build.